Well, Victoria, with its strong manufacturing base, has borne the brunt of many of Australia's job losses. To find out how the Baillieu government intends to counteract that, I spoke to Treasurer Kim Wells yesterday. Treasurer, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
Qantas has announced it's cutting 200 jobs in Victoria and 1,000 more under a cloud. How will you try and convince the company to stay in Victoria?
At the moment, what we're doing is working very closely with Qantas. We'll be working with them even more closely over the coming weeks to see what we can do as a state government to save jobs.
They haven't asked for money yet. Will you offer it?
Well, the Qantas have not asked for any financial assistance, and we'll go through a process of working with Qantas to see what their needs are and what part the state government can play.
What do you think that part will be?
Well, let's have those discussions with Qantas. Let's not preempt what those discussions may be, but we want to have a successful outcome to make sure that we're protecting as many jobs as possible here in Victoria.
Will you be the lead negotiator with the Premier in India next week?
So the Premier will be leading that delegation to India. It will be significant for this state. It's a super delegation, and I think it's going to be great for Victoria getting into those emerging economies and attracting business here into Victoria.
But with him away, will you take the lead in terms of, do you intend to meet with Alan Joyce? Do you have plans?
Look, they'll be discussed later in this week to work out the way that we will negotiate with Qantas.
There's been a long list of companies to announce sackings or redundancies in Victoria recently. Holden, ANZ, Hines. Has that taken you by surprise?
Look, it's incredibly disappointing, especially for the families of the workers that have lost their jobs. But the Victorian government has a very strong economic strategy to be able to grow the economy and to create jobs.
Now, what is that strategy?
We've been very consistent about this. Firstly, we have to have a strong financial position. And we had the budget update, which was very difficult, but they were the right decisions to put us in a strong financial position moving forward. Secondly, productivity. And I mean, during the Kennett years, we were well above the national average when it came to productivity. Over the last 10 years under Labor, we've fallen below the national average. So we have got to get that productivity up. And
but what does all that mean?
Okay, so it's about improving the skills base. It's about cutting red tape. It's about sticking to the EBA negotiations. That is the 2.5% plus the productivity. It's making sure that we're a low-cost government.
So, having said all that, looking specifically at the manufacturing industry, which is strong in Victoria or has been up until this point, the Federal Treasury says that the Australian dollar will remain high for an extended period. Given that that high dollar is badly affecting the manufacturing industry, is it inevitable that more people in Victoria working in that industry will lose their jobs, and what will you do about it?
Well, I guess the manufacturing, you're dead right, it is an important part of Victoria. And the high Australian dollar, whether it be between 105 and 107 cents, is not helping the situation. But we're calling on the federal government to ditch the idea about this carbon tax, because we rely on brown coal as a competitive advantage when it comes to producing power. To put a carbon tax on that will hurt our manufacturers even more.
So what's your solution?
Well, you mentioned about Treasury, Federal Treasury, saying that it'll have an impact on manufacturing. We want them, the federal government, to get rid of the carbon tax.
Is that your only solution to the manufacturing industry's problems?
No. There's other issues, obviously. We had the response to the VCAC in regards to manufacturing, and that is about making sure that our local manufacturers are better informed. It's about cutting the red tape. It's making sure that the OH&S laws are fair and that we don't have the federal government imposing OH&S laws on our manufacturers. And it's making sure that they know that we're able to fight tooth and nail to get rid of the carbon tax to keep their power prices at a realistic level.
On supporting industry, Alcoa is threatening that it might close its aluminium smelter at Point Henry. They haven't yet asked for assistance, but do you believe that's a good way forward?
Look, there are 600 jobs, and plus they are saying that the ripple effect is another 6 for every 1 job at Alcoa. So, that's an important point in regards to Geelong. So, once again, we're working with Alcoa, working with the federal government to make sure that we are doing our very best to be able to protect those jobs down at Alcoa.
So you haven't ruled out offering assistance?
Well, let's see what Alcoa is putting on the table in regards to requests. I mean, it'd be inappropriate for us to go and offer money when maybe money is not the issue.
With Alcoa there that threatening to perhaps close the Point Henry smelter, and also coupling that with the Qantas problems at Avalon, now perhaps saying that they might close their maintenance centre at Avalon. Have you got a strategy for the Geelong region?
Well, I think with the issue, as I mentioned, having a statewide strong finances, the issue of productivity, support and industry assistance in regards to some of the items I've just discussed. But there's also the Regional Development Fund. I mean,
but have you got a specific sort of emergency plan for the Geelong economy? Because at the moment it stands to lose perhaps thousands of jobs.
Well, as I said, we have a statewide
so no specific plan for Geelong?
Well, an economic strategy for the state is very important, and that isn't just Geelong, it's also Geelong, Ballarat, Bendigo, it's for all those regions. So it's about having high productivity, it's about having the strong finances, but it's also using the Regional Growth Fund to be able to improve productivity for manufacturers in those areas to be able to get their product to port and to rail.
Just finally, earlier this week your government also put out a statement saying it was disappointed in the ANZ redundancies. How can you criticise companies for sacking workers when the government's looking to shed 1 in 10 public servants?
Look, we made a deliberate decision at budget update time to reduce the VPS by 10%, and it's about freeing up money to make sure that we have the money available for those frontline services, but also to be able to build up surpluses, to build vital infrastructure and to make sure that we're not going into debt.
Treasurer, thanks very much for your time.
Pleasure.